Hello and welcome to another episode of Speculative Speculations. I'm Vasha,
I'm Jared.
And I'm Chris.
and this is a series where we talk about speculative stories in all their forms. Today, we're continuing our read through of A Desolation Called Peace. I love that slow motion intro of the book, Jared. The short story for today is I have to look it up. I'm sorry. I
Strange
always
woman.
Thank
Standing.
you.
Or standing woman. Standing woman. She's a
Standing
strange
woman.
standing woman, as it turns out. But yeah.
The story was strange, yes. But this it's called Standing Woman, by Yasutaki Tsutsui, if I remember correctly. Or
Absolutely. It almost, at this point, that Yasutaka sounds like a family member. You're saying it so easily.
and we are going to be continuing Desolation Called Peace with the next episode. We'll be reading the next 100 odd pages, which brings us to what chapter, Chris?
A certain chapter number. I'm not sure.
Okay, chapter 12, I imagine.
12, most
Yeah,
likely.
probably. That actually goes to the end
Yeah.
of 11, if I
Yeah,
remember
things-
right.
Okay.
But yeah.
Today's discussion is going to be chapters 5 through 8, and there are a couple of interludes in between which are included in that section, about 107 pages, which is approximately what we read every week. If you'd like to join us for this discussion or any other of the many read-alongs we host on the Patreon forum, please consider checking that website out. And sorry, Chris, before we move on, what's the short story for next week?
The IWM 100
Oh, yes.
by Alicia Yenix Cosio.
Thank you very much. That's both of these are from the Big Book of Science Fiction, which also we are working our way through, have been since pretty much the beginning, and will go on for a while. All right, with all that said, this segment of Desolation called Peace. More fun, still enjoying it, or as middle sometimes do, did it start to flag for you guys?
No, I enjoyed.
Nice. Same, Chris.
I think some of the payoff and decisions for how they've structured the narrative and stuff, and how this Imago thing goes together, makes some of this section really leap off the page. I think the scene that we'll get to later, where they confront each other in the shuttle, because of the kind of layered way that they have done this narrative, I think is absolutely fantastic, given the tension that's there, and it works on so many levels. And it just really struck me at that point of, like, the first book is interesting how they set it up, but we'd only really had a scanner at the end of the first book, and we've got a scanner from the whole way through this, and other people within the story have their own Imago lines and stuff, and everything's so multi-layered. It feels very interesting, and we have lost a Porsche, so yeah.
It's just a technical glitch in the Imago.
Did your Imago decide that it was the end of the episode for you tonight, Porsche?
I guess so. I don't know. StreamYard keeps kicking me out. This has happened every recording so far, or like recently. First 5 minutes in or something, it kicks me out, and then it's fine the rest of the way through. So,
Well,
I don't
this
know.
is the epic story of 7 apocalyptic fudge.
Yes.
0 attendance, yeah, indeed.
Top of the lameness scale for as epic narratives go.
Yes. So I would like to start with the interlude. Actually, normally I find
Yes,
interludes a little,
I
you
actually
know,
want
they are put in, and you kind of don't really know what's going on, and it sort of makes sense later on in the book. I think that I found that quite a lot. Tchaikovsky would have done that a lot. You know, these kind of little intersections in between to show you that other stuff's happening. But this one was very different to that.
Yeah, this one actually hit, I think, in a lot of places, and it gave us a lot of information. I love the first line, to consider the uses of meat. I think that's absolutely brilliant. And then, it breaks down into sustenance, reuse, and skill and stuff like that. And it breaks it down to these categories. And of course, all you can think about is where the meat, and and I think that's just I think that's excellent. And you get in this. I mean, I imagine it's the alien thinking this, and the aliens thinking they are not persons. they are language.
They think language.
They think language, yeah. And if they react, but they react as if they are persons. So it's just this really interesting omniscient look at what the aliens think about who they're coming up against, or
Mhm.
this this active meat they're coming up against. And I thought that was brilliant, but I also like the second part of it
Yeah.
where you get Acnel Imnarbat. You get their perspective on
Yes.
um the whole on Mahit Damari, and what she expected through that imago line, which
Mhm.
is not at all Mahit's perspective. I mean, it's so different from any perspective we've gotten, and I really like that too.
Yeah.
And I think it speaks a little bit to why she maybe let Mahit go without any argument, because she mostly just wants to get rid of Mahit and Iskandar. So if they die this way, she's probably fine with it.
Yeah.
But to speak about the alien a bit more, I think it was also implied that they absorb the essences of whatever it is that they put their weird spit thing on, which is interesting. And we were speaking a little bit about the cosmological horror of it all.
Mhm.
Uh, is that what that's called? Sorry, the
Cosmic horror.
exist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, cosmic horror
Mhm.
that n- that this alien sort of invokes. And I think between the voice, the weird sounds that makes them keep throwing up, and the the how they move, which I think Eight Antidote compared it to as if they were carrying their own jump ships, like
Mhm.
jump
That's right.
gates, and were
Yes.
moving along that. The fact that they were hiding in a jump gate to laying ambush for pilots, I think all of that just increases the level of not yeah I think the alienness of this alien, I think, is ramps it up quite brilliantly. I think makes this alien super interesting, and their overall exchange with it. And I think it's even like quite brilliant that they want to try and talk to it. Sure, they want to
Mhm.
also shoot at it, but um given that this is an entity that they have absolutely no understanding of, but there's also that little bit of confidence and knowledge from having dealt with other entities, not quite like this, but they've met and tamed aliens before. So quote unquote tamed, but yeah, they so that so the fear, but not somewhat lack of it, that they can handle these creatures, I think is it just makes for a great first contact setup. I'm
Yeah.
really loving this story.
Yeah. I, I I find the exploration of the alien in this section really interesting, because obviously we have the autopsy later on, and we pull apart actually maybe how they function a little bit, because at this stage of the book we don't know what kind of form they are take. Like, we discover that at least the thing that they find is mammalian in some way, but at this time it could be another form of creature or anything. But the fact that it's set up as a parasitic creature is sort of very reminiscent, I think, and I've sort of alluded to it earlier, Children of Ruin, by Tchaikovsky as well. I think this is a very Tchaikovsky kind of idea, where he looks at species and how they interact with each other. I think that's something that he's always been very interested in. And the fact that they're parasitic and that they sort of hide within the jump gates and sort of piggyback their way across the universe or around the places is so interesting. Plus, we also get the insight that they are communal in nature. So they have this kind of attack, how they use their voices, etc., to weaken their appointments, etc., is done as a community. And when they say they are not persons, I wonder if that means that they do not see them as persons because they don't operate as openly as like a hive. They do things together and as movement, whereas they think language, but occasionally they do move as persons because they go about in ships together. There are things that are communal about them, but they don't act like that. And we can actually see that borne out in the story, I think, because there's an awful lot of interpoliticking going on here, where people who are supposedly on the same side and from the same background and culture are at odds with each other constantly, even if they're in a war to fight together. And again, comes back full circle when 19 adds, he basically gives an antidote, the idea of just check whether this person's trying to win this war. Could you just report back to me? Seems like a funny thing to say, but they're at war. Are they trying to win it, or what is the game going on here? Which again, layers upon layers upon layers upon layers of stuff that is going on. Similarly, for adding the Bharat Rabbit, that person, the exploration of the bit that I really liked is the fact that they had a plan for dealing with Iskander and Mahit, these two very capable people within their society, and getting rid of them has backfired, and backfired quite badly on them. And actually, to that end, is probably why they think the easiest thing to do is get them out of sight, get them killed in the war at that stage, because they are at the moment a threat to their setup and culture. And for me, the biggest takeaway from that whole bit, and I'd really like your opinion on this, it sort of feels like the author is setting up the Ilsil people as bad. You sort of want, or I certainly get the sense that we want Mahit to defect.
I think we've wanted that even in the first book.
Yeah.
Just by the way, like you said, the way the author sets it up. But I also think that that it also, what's her name? I can't remember the person on Lascelles, right?
Oh yes.
Yeah. But I also think she was, her plans, like you said, were thrown away. I don't think she has a plan. I don't think, even if this war thing doesn't work out where Mahit dies, it at least gives her a chance to think of something else.
Yeah.
So it's also a delaying tactic of a sorts, and letting her go does that at the very least without just outright killing her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do think Ilsel, at least all the people that we have met, feel like non-sympathetic characters, especially Tarets, which is interesting because the first, I forget if it was entitled Prelude. I think it was the Prelude, in which we met Tarets and his dangerous idea for pitting empire against empire and having them destroy each other. At that time, like not having been given enough time to really think about it, or even enough context for that matter, felt like I was on his side, that this um poor little station that might be devoured into empire at any moment, and he's trying to do something about it. But now it feels like a dangerous and selfish plan that can't be good for anybody, especially with the view that we get of like when Three Seagrass is wandering off into the station, for instance, and a lot of the traders are like are trying to get trade contracts out of it. So it seems like what the counselors want is different from maybe what the citizens of the station want. They probably want a bigger life for themselves, and Texcalan can give it to them, but they are trying to preserve something which may or may not be worth preserving, or maybe not in the way that they want to preserve it.
Yeah. I mean, you think that, was it Tahit? That was the name, right? That
Taraj,
Taraj Tahit, yeah. That he, like you said, he was playing a dangerous game by pitting the aliens against the Empire. But on the other hand, if he didn't do that, would Lascelles be now just gobbled up by aliens?
Probably, but he wasn't trying to protect Lascelles from the aliens, though, was he? Or maybe he was. Maybe it was, two birds, one stone, because he knows of this imminent threat too. And perhaps it's, instead of seeking help from the Empire, it's threats, maybe they'll both destroy themselves in the process. But
Yeah, because
at
if
the end, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
it's not he did it in a way that they didn't have to ask for help and be
Yeah.
beholden to the empire, um, which is pretty clever. And
Yeah.
I wonder if I don't know if he would have known this the way that Iskander would know, but I wonder if he knew that the empire would approach it in a manner that, we conquer stuff, we'll take care of this, no problem. That the empire is doing right now, even still, even though they're, some people are worried, but they still have that overconfidence going for them.
Yeah.
So I wonder if he knew that that's how they were going to approach it, and if he had kind of that same projected confidence onto the empire that they would take care of this threat for them, and he did it in a way that didn't look like Lassell needed them.
Yeah.
That's pretty clever if that's what the case is.
It's also more than implied, I think, that he has engineered the aliens into the space in the first place. Um, or certainly I got that sense that he'd engineered them in here. Like even the scene at the end where their pilot was trying to escape and he's basically turned them away to make sure that they didn't come into Cell space and send them back to
Sure.
Texalani. At that stage, again, it's almost like he's tried to make sure that their station is not swallowed up in this and not involved. Let them fight amongst themselves over there, and we'll kind of sit and build trade relations, and we'll build our spaceport, etc. And by virtue of the war, they'll be weakened, and we can do it. Now, little did either of them realize that when Mahit went across there, he would make such close ties with the now emperor, and with the administration there, and actually set up uh, a truce for a number of years, certainly for that
Right.
for that place. So that sort of messed it all up. But much like the people in the Texcalan Empire as well, there's the first book there was an awful lot of maneuvering, and the whole point of that book at the end was obviously the power struggle at the end to replace the emperor. And it seems that similar thing is happening in Ilsel here, with all of these factions sort of having their own mini plans, but none of them joined up with each other. And the feeling that actually they're scheming against each other is ultimately going to be their undoing. At the end of it, if they hadn't put their ideas together and come up with a plan as a society, they'd have been much better off. Which again goes back to this alien threat of they are not persons. They do not think as one. They do not have a common goal. They do not have all of those things. I sort of feel like it's a take on that idea of community building and future societies. But super interesting for sure.
That brings up a question. Do you guys think that Mahit was treating Three Seagrass unfairly, or do you think that Three Seagrass needed the slap across the face and the wake up call that Mahit was giving her? What do you feel about that?
So you're talking specifically about their argument when they get
Yes.
together? Yes. So it's
Yeah.
again another fascinating scene.
Because it's relevant to the alien and barbarian and other type argument.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that whole conversation / argument / this disagreement was trying to force Three Seagrass to see the position that Mahit's under without Mahit betraying their mission, so to speak, as a spy and as somebody that's an infiltrator. He's forcing Three Seagrass to go, why you treat me like this? We have history. I know who you are as a person. They've even had relations of some way that they feel, and that is one of the things that Three Seagrass, the reason that they went to get Mahit was that they felt that they knew each other and they could understand them very well. So that question, and that's that question that Three Seagrass does. Did I say things different? What did I say? What did I do to offend them? And end them with Mahit going, well, if you can work out why I'm acting like this, then we can have a proper conversation again. Until then, let's get on with the job. Just a fascinating scene, though.
Yeah. I think Mahit made really good points.
Mhm.
I think it was unfair in the sense of maybe she could have had a conversation with Three Seagrass and not like blown up on her, but to be fair, she's been sort of like letting a lot build up, especially with her her, I guess, the very real possibility that Iskandar might not cooperate. Like, she's still got this bit of a split brain and they want different things right now, or at least she thinks that they want different things, and she's in a lot of trouble at home. And unlike Iskandar, I think she very much hates the idea that she can't go back home again if things don't go well for her. So she's got a lot dealing with. So yeah, I think what you said makes sense, Chris, about the this is how she's sort of letting her know about the position she's in. But also, yeah, they had like these mild arguments of this nature in the first book, but it felt like Three Seagrass was sort of just, oh, my cute little barbarian, and like nudging it off. So maybe she needed this blow up to really see that she wasn't treating her fairly, or like she wasn't giving her respect in the sense that she's not seeing her appropriately. Like she sort of like built a wrapper around Mahit, like according to, I guess, what she wants her to be, but not what she truly is. And maybe that's what's frustrating to Mahit. What do you think, Jared, since you asked the question?
No, I think that's right. It is very frustrating to me, because I think she sees three seagrass, because like you said in the first book, they kind of had these little arguments, but they were always more playful in the first book, and they had there was a certain level of attraction, and they were dealing with that, and have in the, like I said, the arguments weren't as deep as the one here. This one really got into the weeds about what their differences are and what their obstacles are to being in a more pleasant relationship, other than what the reality of the situation is. And so I thought it was like Chris said, I thought it was a brilliant scene, and I thought it was really well done, because it didn't resolve the problem, but it did bring up the means to see the issues and see the problem. And and I think that's was really well done, to get us to want some kind of resolution between these two by the time we get to the end of the book. And we want them, you know, we want a satisfying resolution. Whether that resolution is they actually do come to, uh, to get together or what have you, or they actually realize that they have to go on with their lives. I think the uh, the the uh, the notice now that this relationship's on notice. I think that is really great, and I thought it was just very well done.
Yeah, I think it's also worth pointing out that this is not like being on Text Clan at all. This is a very adversarial place for Mahit to be in. He is spoken down to from the moment she gets on this ship, and referred to as barbarian the whole time. So it is not like the first book at all, where 19 Adze had sort of this prior relationship with Scander, sort of blurred the lines a little bit. And I went through. I did actually call. I usually try and think of a name to call these episodes when I'm doing and I definitely, I called this one "Mummy and Daddy Are Fighting," because that's sort of what it read like when I was doing it. I was like, no, don't be fighting. Used to. I like you. These guys,
I like you guys.
Good to you. I like you guys. Stop fighting. We don't need to do this right now. This is not needed. We've only just got together. We've got work to do. Because within the middle of it, Three Seagrass is also talking about how much that they admire Mahit for their use of language, and how how brilliant they are at using the language, and all of that kind of stuff. There's a real admiration that comes through in that, and you can sort of feel the admiration and attraction sort of within the middle of it. So this kind of rebut and retort that Mahit gives kind of shakes Three Seagrass a lot, I think, because it's almost like, what did I do wrong? What did I say? I didn't mean that. That's not. But there's a purpose to what Mahit's doing in doing that.
And there's also a sense of, don't you know I don't mean that?
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
But he's like, yeah, but you still keep doing it, even though,
Love that bit. Love that bit.
Yeah.
Also wanted to talk about the devastation on the planet. Obviously, when they go down and find
Oh,
this
Oh
kind
yeah.
of this desolation of how they have dismantled an entire colony and left it, bodies and all just kind of ripped apart and ripped asunder on the planet. It was pretty gruesome. Again, sort of reminiscent, I think, of some parts of Children of Ruin, from Tchaikovsky. I think there was
that's
definitely
right.
elements of that, but felt horror like. But again, with the sense of why are they doing this? Because it seemed like they were doing it to destroy the resource to make the cloud hooks. That seemed to be the initial kind of push to it, which again, we talked about this last week, but it gives the idea that they know a lot about Texcalan society and that they are trying to hit them where it hurts by hitting a very key resource for them. And the point is made later on, obviously, that they don't appear to want or using this resource. They are there to destroy it, which again is sort of implied that maybe they are using it in some way. The thing that's made to use Cloud Hook, but yeah, taking away their technology seems to be an interesting ploy, and again gives the idea that they're kind of already in their current society in some way, and the information is sort of feeding out from there, which again is another fascinating undertone to all of this because it hasn't been revealed or anything, but it's just sort of implied, like a lot of things are implied in this book.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't think of that, about how they even know, because they've only met these pilots, right? The
And the warships and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and I think the second interlude talks about how the piloting aspect of them is similar to their own being, but everything else is persons. So yeah, do we know of them to have attacked any Texkalani ships, or did they did Texkalan, the emperor, did he think that they were not that big of a threat? Did he know about them already and not pay attention until he got the missive from Cell Station?
Mhm.
Or was it that he didn't even know of the existence? I think he knew something, right? Like he knew that they existed, just didn't realize that they were this big of a threat.
Yeah, well, again, it's sort of, to me, they got the missive from Darge basically at that
Hmm.
time to say that they're here. But again, part of that plan from Darge, and this is why they say it, in order for them to draw them to Tex Clan, he needed the Tex Clan to go out and get them,
Mm,
sort of lead them back. Because they're sort of parasitic, they are not really moving of their own volition. They're sort of
mm,
piggybacking on other ships. So in order to make that happen, he needed this fleet to go out and meet them. And then when they
yeah,
retreat, they will literally draw them back to the planet, which again is incredibly clever. If I'm correct in my reading of that, which is why I sort of think he's sort of planned this in a lot of ways. He's
yeah,
he's he's sort of maneuvering that. But yes, the use of this resource, either they're already in the society or when they have subsumed and eaten by their liquid or their whatever, the acid kind of thing, the ships, that they've got an understanding of their technology now just from that process. It's
yeah,
also possible.
yeah. It's possible. Or they read the minds of the people that
Yes,
they
indeed.
ate from that station
Yeah.
and figure out what this is for, and then systematically destroyed it rather than whatever it was they did with the people. It's yeah. No, this alien is super fascinating.
Yeah.
Likely one, maybe the most interesting, if not one of the like. I think I had to say it the other way around. But like probably the most interesting alien that I've read. But one other aspect about the alien dissection was when Mahit talks about this being a ring narrative where like things are sort of repeating themselves, a spiraling nature of the story, right? Like the first book, she she entered, takes Kalan, and she had to see a corpse, and this is happening
Oh yeah.
again, and she sort of observed that about herself, and that's true for us too, because like we are reading the same story, but in a different setting. So yeah, I love that. I think this is kind of what I meant by the self-referential nature of the book last time. This is an example, I think, where in speaking of the narrative form that is constructed around the stories that happen in the book, like the actual events from the perspective of the characters, because takes Kalan things in narrative form. Uh, there is a self-referential nature to the story itself being told, in terms of like how it's structured and so on. So I think that that's quite brilliant.
Yeah, I agree with that. That is brilliant. It's a good point. Approach danger. Hurrah, we win. I love the theorizing around the um dismantling of the corpse.
Oh
Uh
yeah.
because you had the viewpoint of the military people first, and then you had the viewpoint of Mahit and Three Seagrass, um, getting a bit more philosophical about their findings and reasonings, and I just think that we stopped at a point where Mahit had an idea, and that's always like a stopping point where it's like, wait, what's the idea? And but yeah, so very cool stuff.
Yeah. I also love that when we have first contact stories, typically it's humans haven't met aliens at all. They have no experience of meeting with aliens, and then they go do a bunch of dumb shit that gets them in trouble. Like a lot of first contact stories are like that. But this one is different in that this is an empire that has met other aliens. It's first contact with this alien, and so a lot of the things that they do, I don't have to think about, okay, how do you know to do that? Or how do you know that that's safe? You can sort of assume that they followed protocol, like bringing the alien into the ship. I was like, no, don't do it. You don't even know that it's properly dead. You don't know enough about it. But
I mean, they should have watched 1977's or 1979's Alien. Like,
Mm.
that's literally 101. What happened in there? That's your cautionary tale. God damn it.
So, like their overconfidence, unlike a lot of the first contact movies and stories, it's somewhat warranted. It doesn't feel like overconfidence, but a bit like, they know what they're doing. They've done this before, they've developed protocol and they're following it. So I kind of like that setting and the sense we have of the empire now that gives us that kind of confidence.
Yeah, that's funny. I kind of feel like this particular fleet and this particular empire would have had no problem handling Alien from the Alien movies,
Yeah.
you know, where or it would have had a better handle on it, anyways.
Yeah, quite possibly. Quite possibly. Um,
But
yeah,
you never know that this could all turn around in a moment. So we'll
yeah.
see.
Well, again, I thought this was quite interesting because obviously we've had a book and 200 pages. So we're sort of more than 2/3 of the way through the book, or even nearly coming up to halfway through this book. And my idea of where this book appears to be going, there's not enough pages to resolve that story. Do you know the war
Interesting.
with
What
the
is
aliens?
okay? War with aliens. Okay,
War
yeah,
with the
right.
aliens that stretches out over a lot of time. They find out they conquer the thing, and then the relationship with the Ilsul and Tex Clan gets resolved. There's not enough pages in the book, so that can't be what the book's about. In a lot of ways, it's still going to be this discovery piece about who the aliens are, what their motivations are, what they're looking for, and what they're using the resource for. And within the midst of that, like I said, I'm expecting a defection here.
Mm, mm,
I'm expecting a very clear defection. And the other element of that has been running concurrently the whole way through this book is this young boy, 8 Antidote,
yeah.
who has taken such an interest in warmongering and smart and that kind of stuff. And I know I say this an awful lot, but my favorite thing in fiction, especially speculative fiction, is reading about smart people. And
Mm,
this book is full of smart people on all sides.
Yeah.
They are
yeah.
all capable. And that, for me, makes this really interesting. It's not like we have somebody evil within the story that's an idiot and you want to take them down. You want them to be outsmarted and that their own hubris sort of defeated them in some way. And as appears in the story, it looks like an 11-year-old boy is probably the one that's going to do it. And that's incredibly satisfying even to read at the moment because he's not involved in the story. Well, not yet, but he's literally put himself in that. But he's sort of being egged on from the back by 19 Adzi, which is a character that we loved a lot in the first book. And we're sort of losing their impact in this book. But the moments where 19 Adzi is in the story are like gold dust. There's like, oh, you're such a clever character. This is so good.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really. It's funny because you're really enjoying a story with
Mhm.
Mahit and Three Seagrass, and then it switches to them, and you're like, oh, it's switching. But then you get right back into it, and you're like, oh wow, I'm really enjoying
Yeah.
this story as well. And so a lot of novels have a tough time doing that, keeping you interested in two stories at the same time while switching back and forth. And, a lot of times you'll be reading something and be like, we're back with these people. Okay, come on, come on, come on. Let's get back to the ones I want to read about. But
Yeah.
this doesn't happen here. I'm invested in both.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. And I think that took a while, right? Because and it's also interesting that she started like the author started in this story with 9 hibiscus and not with 3 seagrass or mahid, because
That's right.
that's obviously
Yeah.
who we are here for. But they spent enough time building up this character that I was happy to be back with 9 hibiscus too,
Sure.
when like we took the mahit and 3 seagrass break, and now they're all together, and I love all of them. I'm so keen to see how they all interact and work together. And I'm like falling in love with 20
Cicada. Yeah.
cicada.
Yeah.
How do you say
Cicada.
it? Yeah.
Cicada. Yeah.
Yeah. um Too. I love all those characters.
And we
Even sorry, go ahead.
we get that extra bit of insight from Iskandra about 20 Cicada as well,
Oh
Swarm,
yeah.
about the fact that they are not like the other Texcalan. They're kind
Mm,
of this homo,
Oh
this
yeah.
another culture and tribe.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought of that tattoo again, another layer and another thing to throw in and just get you to think about, because not everybody's sort of working on the same page again. Here's another faction. Here's
Yeah.
another viewpoint within the society. We haven't had the sunlit in this book or anything, although they've been referred to a couple of times. There's such a rich tapestry of interweaving culture and
Yeah.
storytelling and that kind of stuff through it, runs throughout these books.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, how interesting was that thing about the funerals and the names of the fallen since, like, I
Mm,
don't know, 16 centuries ago or something like that.
yeah,
It's and it adds into that whole narrative about how Kalani live their lives like it's an epic poem,
mm,
right? And it's all of this together, like much like Mahit, I can't help but fall in love with Kalani culture, right? Knowing
yeah,
what it's like. And yeah, it seems overall probably not true, but it seems overall like a benign, interesting kind of culture. But it also does that thing where it, I guess, consumes or absorbs the colonies and cultures that it conquers. So maybe it's not all benign.
yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
yeah. What else? 16 Moonrise. What do we think of her? She is also a very interesting character.
Yeah, bet
Don't
so.
like her. Maybe dislike her intensely, but
Yeah, because she's antagonistic.
mm,
Everybody else in both of these societies is kind of quietly playing their cards close to their chest a little bit, and 16 Moonrise is as well, but in a much more overt nature. They're being much more confrontational about it. They're being much more probing about it, which gives us, when we've got the viewpoint of 9 Hibiscus, we get them questioning and asking themselves in the internal monologue actually what they think's going on, and in doing so, they explain to us a bit more about the culture. So again, it's an interesting storytelling and narrative technique to do that, to have this person kind of come in and ask questions and then have it explained to us what that question really means. Again, more smart writing, more smart
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
more intrigue.
Yeah, you need that character. We needed that character in
Yeah,
order to get that information, and to build that tension on the bridge and stuff. And it's really well done.
yeah,
yeah, yeah. This I think, to your point about where this book is going, Chris, I suspect maybe where it's going is the building of diplomatic relationships with this alien, or
oh,
little
interesting. Yeah,
arrival style, probably. I mean, like
yeah,
the spook has to be useful, right? Like there are sort of main characters, and I'm hoping it doesn't turn into war with the aliens,
yeah. That's not
but we'll
interesting.
see.
The
Yeah.
the main character's got to be useful. What?
But I think that's interesting because on the face of it, this is a very clear space opera book.
Mm, yeah.
But I actually, the actual space opera elements aren't really there, and I like you, Varsha. I sort of feel that's not where this is going. It's
Mm,
been a lot more insular from the start. It's
mm,
been much more about people and relationships and misunderstandings and this kind
yeah.
of anti, this anti-racism kind of message that's been coming through. Just because you're of a different race doesn't mean you make you my enemy. At a very base level,
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
enemies are actually your friends in your
Mhm.
society.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the title tells us there's something called peace coming.
Yeah.
Uh, why is it desolating though?
Mm,
Why is it a desolation if there is
indeed.
going to be this peace? That's the big
Yeah.
question.
Interesting. Yeah. And why was it on to that point? What do you think a memory called Empire was? I almost thought just from that title before we read it that it's about some empire of long ago.
Hmm.
So what do you think the memory part of that name is?
I thought it had to do with the Imago
Mm,
technology,
Oh, interesting.
yeah.
um,
I hadn't thought about
and
that.
how the memories of the empire are through a different means than what it was contrasting to the memory of how the
Mm,
LaSalle station people work. And the memory of the empire is is through through the epics, through the poetry, through the art,
mm,
and how it
Interesting.
differs, how those memories aren't, they're not real. They're not in
mm,
the present. They're just they're nostalgia, they're wishful thinking,
mm,
and that's the memory of the empire that the people have, but it's not actual. And the
Interesting.
sacrifice of the emperor is a resurgence of that nostalgia, of that
mm.
memory, and that's the empire. He's, the memory that's coming. That's the title.
Interesting. I
Oh,
really like
exciting.
that because
Yeah.
that idea that they live their life through culture, this idea that language is so prevalent in Texalan society and that kind of stuff makes it open to interpretation, which is why you get these competing factions, that basically say, I interpret the
Yeah.
message this way, I interpret the message this way. And yet we had an Emperor Six, oh God, I can't remember what you call him,
Six
Six Direction.
direction. Yeah.
Six Direction. I keep on
You
thinking
were
of the
calling him
band.
one direction.
I was calling him One Direction. That's how I got back to Six Direction at the end. He's searching for what he wanted, his belief of what the Empire should be. He
Mm,
was sort of, and that was sort of his drive for the Imago, was so that he could continue that memory through and build the Empire the way that he thought. We have the new regime in charge, but also Eight Antidote is sort of again got this idea of, I'm going to try and rekindle the idea that Six Direction had about the Empire. That seems to be their driver, and yet we have 19 Azzy going, remember, you're your own person, you just look like them.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
again very interesting.
yeah. And she's reminding herself as much as she is him, right?
Mm,
That exchange was uh, something else. I love that. But yeah, I love that interpretation. And yeah, this and it sort of feeds into this idea that the Texkalani live their lives as if they're main characters in epic poems, right?
mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah. Cool. Anything
All
else
the wo
about these chapters before? Sorry, what were you saying, Jared?
all the world's a stage, that's all I was saying.
Oh
The
yeah,
world's a
sure.
stage. All and world here means Texkalan because it's the same word for the city
Yes,
and the world.
indeed. I have
uh,
some. If anybody has any other kind of story beats, certainly bring them up. I have a closing thought that I'd
mhm.
like to bring, but does anybody got any other story beats that they want to touch?
Good.
I think I've covered
You're good.
mine.
Okay. This is the second duology we've been reading this year. Okay. And science fiction and fantasy and speculative fiction is surrounded by standalones, but more often trilogies and long series. These two geologies we have been reading are spectacular, and I think interestingly, in both cases, so far, and it's, I'm putting this out there to kind of carry us through to the end of the book. I think Parable of the Talents is as great as Parable of Sora is. I think it's vastly superior because it takes the world that it builds on and really asks you questions of that society. And the second thing, rather than just being a continuation of the same, the aspects. I don't really want to spoil that second book, but in this conversation, in case anybody hasn't read it, but I think it takes the themes and some of the ideas and really stretches them. And I think this book's doing exactly the same. In a lot of ways, it built a culture, it built a background to build on, and then it has this it's just a total play field at the moment. Everything's going on, and it's complex enough that makes it interesting, and yet interesting enough to be reading and page turning at the same time. It'll be interesting to see as we go through the book and we get the end of we think that one, that keeps up, and two, why is there's not any more geologies? Because this seems to work absolutely perfectly.
Yeah.
We'll see how it ends. I mean,
Yeah,
you never
absolutely. There's a
know.
lot of pressure.
And this is fairly new, so there's nothing that says it couldn't be a trilogy someday.
That's also true. That is true.
That is true. Yeah. But yeah, I think duologies rule apparently from the 2 sample points we've read so far. But
There aren't too many other ones. Like, let's be
yeah,
clear. Like
that's true. That's
Stephen
unfortunate.
Arion has a couple.
Mm,
I'm struggling at that point.
yeah. I
I
think there
invite
are
people to tell me of others.
there are a lot of either YA or romantasy duologies. Fantasy though.
Okay.
Not aware of many science fiction ones.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. We should probably go hunting for duologies and maybe add some more to to test this theory.
Need recommendations. The only thing about it
Well,
is, I will say Parable of Store and Parable of Silence are both very famed for being fantastic. These are both award-winning books as well. It's a
Mm.
high bar to set for anything coming behind,
Yeah,
like for sure.
yeah. And award-winning, like they both won the Hugo, right?
Yeah, absolutely did. Yeah.
It's Jemison won the Hugo for all 3 books in her
3.
trilogy. This seems to be the other series that won a Hugo for every book in the series, so to speak. Like it's 2 versus 3, but it's an accomplishment, I think. But yeah, no, that's an interesting point, Chris. We should look out for more duologies. Anything else before we talk about the Standing Woman?
Yeah. Other than to say, both those geologies are both written by women, so female authors obviously rule as well. So
Yeah,
there
that
we
too.
go.
Yes. uh, Standing
Yes.
Woman.
Standing Woman.
Summaries.
Okay, short one.
Yeah.
Summaries
Tell
of the story. So we are in a society which is clamping down on people's thoughts and speaks. About 1984 ish, Jared's favorite book of all time, in some ways. So the dystopian future, and people are held to account by basically turning them into
trees.
inanimate, nearly basically trees. They still seem to have their essence of the person, but more crucially, they're turned into trees as nearly a public shaming ritual. But any people are not allowed to visit them, and they are not allowed to engage with them, regardless of, because that would be seen as being sort of co-conspiratorial in some ways. And we have a character whose wife was turned into a tree, and by the end of the story, he wants to go visit her and see how things are going.
He wants to get it replanted into his.
Yes, he does, in his back garden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true love.
Yeah, for sure. I want my my wife, who is a tree, in my back garden. Maybe she can cut the grass while she's there. I don't know what his plan was.
No, it was. It was interesting, no doubt. I never heard about dog pillars and
Dog pillars, cat pillars,
cat pillars and
man trees, man pillars,
man trees, man pillars. Very interesting. That's yeah, that's just the thing about these stories. Yeah, these short stories that get thrown into this huge book and get lost within the immensity of how many stories there are in here. You always come across one that just gives you something that you'd never thought about before, and this was one of them.
Yeah, turning people into trees, right?
Well,
As a form of
yeah,
punishment.
yeah, while still having a very, I think, powerful message in
Yeah.
that, this is what can happen. Governments can clamp down. You go against them, boom. That's it, and that, like you said, very 1984. Although I enjoyed reading this a lot more. Um, but the and very 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 warning.
Yeah.
Be careful. Don't let your society become this. Um, who could? One of the lines was, "Who could still who?" Yeah, I'm lowered my eyes, ashamed of myself. Who still continued to write in such a world?
Yeah.
It's a hard world to write in, and
Yeah.
because why? You can't actually write what you want. You have to make sure that what you write doesn't piss off the government, and so
Free
it's
speech.
yeah, it's definitely a beware of censorship, beware of speech, beware of the lack of free speech. Keep your First Amendment rights.
Yeah. And sort of on top of that, like the fact his wife thought she was immune to it because her husband was a successful writer. She sort of got a bit above her station and kind of thought that she could speak a bit more freely than other people in society because she had risen society, which again is, I mean, I don't want to say it's kind of prescient for events of the past couple of weeks in America, but it sort of is. But the other part of it is as well that the book ends, or the story ends, sorry, with the next generation normalizing this behavior and sort of
Mm,
mocking and making fun of it, going, "Look at these people,"
yeah,
without realizing that the same thing will happen to them, and they'll be held to the same account. It's not fun and games, but that kind of thing has been normalized as being good in society, or humorous, or playful.
yeah, yeah, and yeah. I wouldn't say it's prescient, but it is relevant.
Relevant, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
And a little metaphorical in the sense of the turning into a tree. What again with the 1984 reference, I think they do something like unperson, declare them as like not even existing, right? So when you take away all the all the rights, that's essentially what you're turning people into, like pieces of stone or blobs that will have no say. So I think it also worked on that level of like the thing that the punishment, it's not just a weird, strange punishment. It also sort of feels like it's saying something about the state of humanity, I guess, in a place like that.
Yeah,
Cool.
Yeah. Very cool.
yeah, cool story for sure.
Cool story, not least because it was short. The next one is pretty short too. The
Yeah,
IWM 1000 by Alicia Yanes Quasio. I don't know if I say
nailed
that
it.
exactly. Yeah. As long as Chris thinks I've nailed it, I'm good.
Look, I'm your hype man. That's all we
Thank you,
need to say.
Chris. And next week we'll continue on with A Desolation Called Peace. I think up to chapter 11 or so was what
Mhm.
we said. And yeah, we'll see you soon. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.